folks missing today. I know Mr. Judson's out traveling, and Matt Champagne and Rick Yorman, I know, are both gone from the committee today, so we'll make do with what we got. Any other items we need to add to the agenda? Okay. All right. With that, let's move forward. Previous minutes, anybody want to recommend those for approval? Okay, second? Okay, all right. Last meeting's minutes are approved. Board member comments? Do you want to maybe update us on the proposal, where that stands and what the next steps are on that?
Thank you. The proposal on wake boats.
Wake boats, yes.
It pretty much went through the Rules and Regulations Committee as you proposed it, and will be considered. We have a general manager's meeting tomorrow. Following Thursday is a work session where it will be presented to the public pretty much the way you gave it to us. You all spent 2 years working on it. We're not trying to second guess you. So realizing that it is a step in a positive direction, that's where we're intended to go with it. So is that what you needed to know?
Yeah.
It's going forward. Rules and regs did not change it.
Okay. Great. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Maybe I missed this somewhere along the way, but the memo that came into, I believe it was it Matt and Don Judson and others from the public that came up with their own recommendations for what the standard should be in the rules. Was that responded to or not? It was very, very thorough. It was like a
That's the one that was,
10-page.
I think, presented in the Rules and Regs Committee. You want to respond to that, what that was about?
Are you referring to what was labeled the white paper?
Yes.
Yeah, there was no change resulting from that. It was considered, and as I say, we have another general managers meeting tomorrow. I know it's on the agenda. I would not anticipate at this time that there would be any change to your recommendations.
Okay. All right. Management comments. Tom's out, so I guess Rick and John, if you guys have anything, and Trey.
So we continue to stock our trout into Lake Brittany as we have monthly. Budget considerations didn't affect that at all, so that's some good news. Lake Ann, we continue to have problems with Lake Ann. It's kind of our yo-yo lake with the rain. It's now down about 50 inches. There are some larger projects that need to be done, dredging in particular, that's going to require a dry lake bed. If we can't get that accomplished by the end of March, we're likely going to consider lowering it again next fall. So that people can get their work done. There's one cove in particular that lakefront property owners have lost their lakefront, and so we want to give them the opportunity to do the work. I've got a couple of agenda items, but we can get to that later. That's the, John, is there, what am I forgetting?
Blue cat.
Oh, we're going to be harvesting our blue catfish from the golf course ponds later this month. I know that we had some water from the creek inundating those ponds a couple times, but we do still have some blue catfish, not sure how many, and I'll report next month.
And Lake Ann, you said, would stay down through March?
It'll stay down through March.
Okay. Let's move then into new business.
No,
Oh, sorry.
Apologies, I forgot I had something to say. The marina is going to be opening the 16th of March. It'll be shortened hours through March and April, and then we'll open up to our full-time hours. I believe it's going to be 7 to 1 on weekdays, and then 9 to 5 on the weekends. Those will be our short hours, and then when we open to our full hours, we'll be staying open later on the weekends this year. A lot of boaters that were wanting to stay out and catch the sun going down and the nicest time of the night. So that'll be happening the 16th, and we'll have boats will be ready to rent. We'll be the marina will be fully open then in the 16th. It'll be just like a regular marina. So we're getting a new motor on one of the boats. It's not decided yet, but we're going to try to move a 60 horse onto the bass boat that now has a 40 horse. And then we're going to run some bass boat specials to try to bring in more renters on that bass boat. That's it.
Anything new as far as merchandise and fishing equipment and things like that this year?
There'll be new merchandise, new hats and shirts out there, and there'll be some couple new little things.
Okay.
But
Sounds exciting. Okay. John? Okay. As we move into new business, I know Rick Yorman has been working on the Secchi Disc volunteers for this year, and he may have put out a call to one of you guys if you've done that in the past. If you're still on that, respond back to him. Most of them are already marked as yes, but there's still a few outstanding. So that's in the works to start. I think that starts in April. Paul, you want to present what you have?
Yes, there's two things. One is that I also sent out a message to the Lakes and Parks Inspection folks, and I got good positive return. I need to replace one. I'm going to bring that up at a fly tower meeting tomorrow, and hopefully I'll get that replacement for the one volunteer that dropped out.
Okay.
Okay? And the other thing I have is sort of a little sermon here about the budget for the coming year. I'll start now by saying that 13 years ago, my wife and I visited Bella Vista and considered it a little piece of heaven. Therefore, we invested here as well as deciding to retire. We have lived on Rayburn part and now full-time since 2007 and have witnessed amazing positive changes in the neighborhood, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years. It's my third year as the Lake JAC representative and would like to express some of my views on the enjoyable opportunities our lake amenities provide to our member families. Our community is in a significant growth phase, as well as a significant constituent phase change. In other words, thin, gray-haired members are being replaced by thick-haired members of all ages. I therefore encourage the POA and management to give the Lakes and Fisheries Department high, if not the highest priority to budget considerations for 2020 as well as the future for the following reasons. It's clear to me our 7 lakes provide more fun things to do for more of our family members than any other POA amenity. Opportunities to enjoy include swimming. Avalon Beach is a new big plus for members of all ages 2 through 80. I've witnessed families spending much of holiday swimming from a Rayburn Dam dock. All through the summer, Rayburn Lake property resident families swim from their docks. My grand and great-grandkids love to swim from my dock on Rayburn. Fishing. The well-managed fisheries provide a good variety of game fish for members to try to catch. Any member can fish from the POA docks located on all 7 lakes. My great-granddaughters, 5 and 7, now enjoy catching bluegill each summer that they visit. As long as I don't ask them to put the worm on the hook or take off the fish, I'm okay. Boating. Kayaks, thousands are presently registered. Paddle boats, a fun way to enjoy a low breeze afternoon. Canoeing, another way to enjoy an afternoon. Water skiing, tubing, and wakeboarding on designated lakes. Note, the 30,000 members of our growing community that participate in the present #1 supported amenity, I bet at least 100 can participate in the variety of activities on our 7 lakes. Why? In general, lake activities are less expensive. For example, fewer and less costly yearly fees. Swim from a POA dam dock at no extra fee. Catch trophy game fish floating in an inexpensive kayak. In other words, no $40,000 bass boat required. Only a $15 annual kayak fee. Underage kids, grandkids can catch nice perch with a cane pole line worm float on any marina dock or dam, no fee. Lakes, in general, are much more convenient and accessible than the present #1 supported amenity. Lakes are available throughout the year, weather permitting. If folks are using the #1 amenity on any given day, in general, more will be using the #2 amenity, our lakes. Bottom line, I urge the POA management to provide top funding to the Lakes and Fisheries Department so it can continue to keep the lakes and associated areas the best they can be for all our member families to enjoy. End of sermon.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Good points. Rick, you have a couple things there we need to cover, kayaks and
Yes,
the bait fish presentation.
So with the passage of the 2020 plan, we felt it proper and necessary to bring forward a couple of items that we currently do on a yearly basis to get the blessing of the Lakes Committee in order to continue. These are things that in a certain light might be seen as too inclusive of the public, but we felt like if we brought them forward in an open forum like this and got approval, then we would be good to go. And so the two things that I want to bring up are one, the kayak demo days that we typically do on Lake Ann every spring. That brings in a local kayak representative. They have manufacturing representatives from various companies that show people how to use kayaks on Lake Ann. It has been technically open to the public, but I would assume that about 90 or 95% of people that come to that are Bella Vista residents. There are other such demo days at other locations, which gets the public at large, but technically it is open to the public. So I would like to bring that open for discussion and to get a vote of approval to continue to do that in the future. Also, our catfish fishing derby for children. Last year we did it on the Meltfield clubhouse pond, the large pond behind the clubhouse. It is open to the public. It has to be open to the public in order for us to get free fish from Arkansas Game and Fish. So I ask too that continue to be open to the public. It's just for children, ages 3 to 15. And I open that for comment.
Okay. Any discussion? Grace?
I know most of the kayaks that are supplied for the demo days is from Ozark. Have you considered opening it up to other kayak enterprises?
It's Ozark Mountain Trading Company.
Yeah.
That's who's doing that.
I know. Have you considered opening it up to other vendors?
We have, and in the past we did. There's another local company that I'm not going to place blame one place or the other, but the two companies don't play well together.
Oh, I understand.
And so I have opened up in the past. I've opened up a separate day for that company,
Okay.
and they have yet to take me up on the offer.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Ed the other day asked me to back that to you about open to the public, you know, when we have the school fishing derbies
Yes.
and everything, you know, that they'll be allowed, you know, to continue to do that, even though, you know, they're not residents.
Yeah, we could lump that in together with the catfish fishing. Most of those kids are either Cooper kids or Baker kids, many of which their parents are members anyway. So yeah, we should, in the interest of full disclosure, we should bring up that as well.
Rick, is the bass boat tournaments, do the people in the back of the boats, are they members?
They wouldn't necessarily have to be. They can be a guest of the person who owns the boat, just like you would if you were fishing at any other time.
Would they have to have a card or something?
Not if they're fishing in the boat with someone who is a member. They're their guests. They're within arm's length.
The boat owner is a member, but
Yes.
then they can bring a guest along.
Yes, and we know the boat owner is a member because they have to have their boat registered.
Other discussion? I think we did. Trey had a comment.
two last points. One on the letting other groups in, other kayak groups in. One thing about the kayak event is that we let them use the lake, but we don't. It doesn't cost us. We're not putting a ton of man hours into it. Or the Ozark Mountain puts it on, which is maybe why there wouldn't be other companies that were there. And we do see revenue from these events, tracking the kind of the tertiary revenue from the like the catfish fishing tournament. You'd have to figure out what you get out of building a lifetime of fishing and those things. But specifically for things like the kayak deal, they sell a ton of kayaks to Bella Vista residents. And at the marina, we rent kayaks to people who went to the demo days, tried it out. Maybe they didn't think that they would like kayaks, but they got interested enough to come out and try it. And
Not only that, but those that get sold to residents, we get the registration money off of that as well.
And we get that every year. So there are benefits to the. We do see clear benefits from that.
Yes, sir.
If we have comments on that, can we say something?
Go ahead. Yes.
On the, about the kayaks, in 2010, there were only 4 registered non-powered boats, and now it has grown to 3,000. So this is definitely a good thing to have. The only question I have about it is that right now you have moorings for some of the kayaks, but kayaks are very susceptible to sun damage. The UV rays make it brittle to where it breaks easy. I was wondering if maybe the committee would want to discuss setting up some, I don't know what to call them. It's a real low shed about 3 feet tall and put it in conjunction with the moorings so that the people could add a few bit to a small amount to their money and have something where it'd help protect their kayaks, because those kayaks bring in a pretty good revenue for the Lakes Committee. That's all.
Can you speak to the sun damage? Is that what
Rick's folks think about, or Jason's
Yeah,
kayaker?
he's right about the sun damage and things like that. So these boats are getting more expensive, and if you keep them out in the sun, that will damage those boats.
I'm sorry, the speakers aren't good for me. If I listen.
Yeah, I agree with you. These boats, as they're getting more expensive and stuff, and you put them out there and they deteriorate. I mean, though we'd like to sell more boats, but still you want to keep your investment. So, I mean, it is a good,
The last one I
A
bought
good
was
thing.
$3,000.
yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that.
I don't know how economically those could be built. Maybe they could be rented like the boat slips, pay $50 a year or whatever to
Yeah,
use it.
it's definitely a consideration. I haven't considered it before.
Okay, well, why don't I make a motion that for 2020, we put our support behind the kayak demo days, the catfishing derby, and the school fishing days? Is that what we call it, I guess? Okay. Okay. All in favor?
I'll have to recruit, sure. I can't be involved in that, but
Okay, understand. One abstain, everybody else was in favor, so. Okay.
Good deal. Thank you.
And then, ready for the bait fish presentation?
I think so. Oh, okay. We asked, Chris earlier this year gave a talk to the fly tire group about shad as a bait fish and pros and cons and the ins and outs and everything you would ever want to know and more about shad. And evidently it was a good one. I didn't hear it, but a couple of the members have asked him to come back and give the same talk to the Lakes Committee. So Chris, along with Jennifer McGriff, will be giving this talk. So hope you enjoy.
We're going to wait a minute for her to come back. She's out for a minute. But yeah, we're going to talk to you about the shad problem, as we like to say. And Jennifer's going to give the first part of it, and then I'll take over to do the last little bit, and then we'll leave that open for questions for everyone. Check, check, check. Maybe we just need to be closer to it.
All right. So today we're going to talk to you guys about shad. Shad populations are found on all of our lakes. Shad populations are found on all of our lakes except for Rayburn and Brittany. The problem is that shad populations are unbalanced. There are a lot of adult shad that are unavailable for consumption. Adult shad can get quite large. They can get up to 16 inches in length and even up to 19 inches. And so here we have a picture that shows mass equals mass. Right now we have the adult population on the left, but what we want is to have a balanced population of shad where there's adult and juvenile shad. So part of the problem with why we have this adult population is shad have a very high fecundity rate. Many fish are born at one time, and they grow quickly, and they're uneatable by most largemouth bass within the first 2 summers. And so to get a balanced population, there needs to be some more juveniles, and we do this by stimulating a spawning. This can be done through plankton fertilization and hybridation. So we do fertilize all of our lakes when needed, except for Brittany. Fertilizing Lake Too Little can cause the food base for fish to be smaller. Fertilizing too much can cause murky water, takes a lot of time and money, and it's limited by the nutrient management plan that we follow. And so just to give you an idea of how much goes into fertilizing, it took nearly 20,000 pounds of fertilizer to fertilize Lowman in 2018. So there's a lot that goes into that. When you fertilize a lake, it promotes plankton growth. That's a food base for shad. That's going to cause them to spawn. And so now you have more fish eating more plankton. There's growth. And again, they're eating more plankton to the point where there's not enough of a food base to stimulate another spawning. And so why don't we just fertilize more? Well, it's because of the rapid growth and the high fecundity rate that there are just far too many adults. This is going to worsen with each spawn. And the high number of adults, they just consume the plankton too fast. So always that starvation means no new spawning. And again, problems with fertilizing is the murky waters, time, money, resources, and it's limited by our nutrient management plan. And so this isn't a reliable way to balance the shad population. It is only one part of the solution. So the next part is the predation. If you have predation, it'll reduce that adult population. There'll be more of a food base, which will cause another spawning. Now you've got both adult shad and juveniles. There's predation on the juvenile shad, which again will reduce the population. There will be growth, and this will continue. And so we do have several predators of juvenile shad on our lakes. That would be your largemouth bass, your hybrid striped bass, and the walleye saugeye. And again, here are those predators. We've overlaid a red oval to compare the gape size of these predators. In the middle there, you have a common size largemouth bass, and underneath is the hybrid striped bass. And as you can see, the hybrid striped bass is much larger than the largemouth bass, but they have a comparable gape size. And so largemouth bass do live up to their name. They do have a big mouth. This trophy size largemouth bass has an even bigger gape size of 4 inches, but it's only 4 inches. And I say that because adult shad getting up to 16 inches in length can be more than 4 inches tall. And so while these predators can easily consume the juveniles,
which can grow up to 7 inches in the first summer, by the way. That's how fast they can grow.
and so they have no problem. The problem is that once they become adult shad, even a trophy-sized largemouth bass cannot consume.
So that brings us to predators of adult shad. So we've talked a little bit about the predators of juvenile shad. Now we need to address the adult shad. That's the piece that we're missing. So the first predator that we have is blue catfish. They are very piscivorous and a very big fish, much more piscivorous than a channel catfish that we typically stock. And as Rick has mentioned, we do have another load of blue catfish that we're going to hope to put in by the end of the month. We did stock blue catfish historically in our lakes, but we stopped for various reasons. But blue catfish will go out into the middle of the lake and actually stalk shad schools, especially in conjunction with other predators like striped bass. So here's an example of a blue catfish that we caught on our lake a year and a half or so ago. 54 pounds. We didn't get a length on it, but it's quite the large fish. Here's another example of a large blue catfish caught by some Virginia Tech researchers. So again, a very big fish. And to put that in comparison size-wise here, we have our previous fish, and here's our blue catfish. So I'll say it again. It's a big fish with a big mouth who can easily eat even the adult shad. Now, I did mention the other fish that blue catfish work well in conjunction with, and that's striped bass. And just if you didn't know, striped bass are one of the parent species that go into producing hybrid striped bass along with our white bass. But the striped bass are typically much larger than your hybrid striped bass, and again, do well with patrolling open waters to attack shad schools. Again, some big fish, 60 and 65 pound, caught on bull shoals within the last decade or so. So just the same as the blue catfish, it's a big fish with a big mouth who can eat adult shad. We'd like to take the time now to talk a little bit more about the striped bass because we feel it's a point of contention among some fishermen. So currently we do not have any plans to stock striped bass, and we do not stock striped bass on our lakes, nor have we ever. But it is something that we are talking about internally, just toying around with, to help with the shad problem, depending on how things go in the future. But we would like to talk a little bit about the striped bass, like I said. So they are an important sport fish and shad control. So many other lakes in the southern U.S. use striped bass specifically for shad control. But like I said, there's a little bit of contention, especially among black bass fishermen and the striped bass. It boils down to 2 points. They're afraid that the striped bass are going to consume the black bass, such as largemouth. And the other point is that they're concerned that the striped bass is going to eat all the prey fish, leaving nothing for the largemouth to eat. But this simply doesn't happen. The literature does not show this. Many studies show that this is not the case. We're going to talk about one briefly here. In general, striped bass consume more than half of their diet in shad, while the largemouth, as well as another black bass, the spotted bass, consume mostly crayfish instead. So they're focusing on a different food resource. Of course, there is some diet overlap. You can see that the black bass did eat some amount of shad. The highest overlap in June, the least overlap in December. But again, focused on different food resources. So a little bit of bioenergetics. The data related to the study, there were the populations that they were looking at, there was roughly the same amount of striped bass as there was largemouth bass. So the study is not biased towards, oh, well, you didn't have enough of one fish or the other. There were equal amounts of both fish, ranging from about 1 to about 9 kilograms per hectare of each fish. And you can simply relate that back to their diet as well. So striped bass consumed up to 28 kilograms of shad per hectare, while the black bass did similarly with crayfish. Now, the striped bass, did eat up to 3 kilograms of black bass, but that's a relatively small amount when the striped bass is mostly focused on the shad. And another point is that in this study, all of the black bass that were consumed by striped bass were less than 12 inches. And so that really does nothing but to stimulate the black bass population, actually. So that's healthy for the black bass. And this should all make sense if you simply look at the ecology of the two fish. The largemouth are primarily ambush predators who tend to stay near edge habitats and along the shore, whereas striped bass are a pursuit predator who goes out into the open water and actively chases schools. So with that, we'll have any questions? That's correct. They're hybrid striped bass. They don't. Yep. Any other questions?
Yes. In the past, some of the biologists have said to keep more of the smaller black bass. Would this make a difference with the small-sized black bass? Because I know that, well, you understand.
Yeah, so the interaction with the black bass and their size, we definitely want to continue to encourage fishermen to keep smaller sized black bass if they catch them, because it's a compounded problem. When you have too many smaller fish, there's too many mouths to feed. So there's not enough food to go around, and that leads to some starvation, and then those fish have a harder time getting bigger. But when you cull the population by continual fishing and harvesting, that leaves more food available for each bass, therefore they can get bigger. So as they get bigger, they can eat bigger and bigger shad.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, too, if we have more and more juvenile shad, right?
I guess my
Then-
question was, the black bass that the striped bass are eating, would be, most of those be smaller fish?
That's correct.
Okay.
Like I said, in the study, it was those fish that were consumed were less than 12 inches in length. So they weren't competing with trophy-sized fish or anything like that. And for the same reason that it was good for that black bass population, those smaller fish were culled, is the same reason that it's good for our lakes, stimulating the black bass spawn and keeping fewer mouths to feed. Okay, I guess that's it.
Why don't you stop them in Rayburn now?
Stock what?
Stop the, shad in Rayburn, so you didn't stop them in Rayburn.
That's correct. They were never stocked in Rayburn, and ideally we would not like to have shad, but yeah, right. Yeah, you see, we're having to come up with these other solutions because shad were stocked in our lakes initially when probably they should have never been. We just don't have the productive food base that, say, a Louisiana or a Florida lake does, where it's just so productive all the time and the shad are just always spawning. And that's why they have those humongous bass down there, but our lakes aren't that productive. So, yeah. That's correct. So the species that we have is gizzard shad. We have tried in vain in the past to have threadfin shad, and they just never took hold. And the threadfin are a smaller fish, but the adults are still pretty large. I mean, they're smaller, but it's still a big fish. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Paul, to your point, to our knowledge, they were never stocked on purpose. There's some hairy data right around the late 80s that goes together with Loch Lomond. We know they probably got here sometime around 88, between 88 and 90. We don't know if they were stocked at that point or not. We assume probably not because the school of thought was kind of shifting around that time. But as far as we know, every other lake has gotten them by accident, and the latest being Lake Ann, who only got them in probably 2013 or 2014.
Didn't they stop the hybrids to try and get rid of the shad in Lake Ann?
To put pressure on the population, not get rid of, just to try and stimulate some more of that production. And the reason, well, I won't give Daryl's reasons, but at least partly, you can imagine that striped bass aren't necessarily a popular thing. But the other thing is just, hybrid stripers. We noticed there was a lot of fishermen that like to fish for what we call schoolers in the summer. And often there's not very good reasons for those largemouth being out in the center of a lake, but those hybrids are always going to be there, and they provide kind of an exciting opportunity out in the center of the lake for those people that really like to catch that schooling activity.
Okay. All right, good presentation. One more thing I have, the board has a couple of meetings coming up. One on the work session on the 20th, and Rick Yorman said he would go attend that one. There's a board meeting on the 27th at 6 p.m. Is someone available to go to that? I'm going to be out of town that week. If 27th at 6 p.m. If you can do that, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, any other new business? that, we'll move into open forum. If anybody has anything they'd like to speak to, we'd like to hold you to the 5 minutes, but floor's open for whoever would like to go first.
The name is Errol Wasson. I live at 97 Mayfair. I have a couple questions related to the wake boat issues. I know that the the Lake Committee has spent a couple years establishing the proposal that was sent to the board. As updated earlier, the Rules and Regulation Committee has rubber stamped that, and the anticipation is the board will probably also approve that. My question is, does the Lake Committee consider their job done on that issue, or is there additional work and next steps you're going to take?
So I intend to continue to do the testing. I'm open for suggestions on how to create the biggest wake possible, and we will test it and video it just like we did before, and the results will be presented to the Lakes Committee. Speaking, not to speak for the committee, but I kind of am. I don't think it was ever intended to be a closed issue. It was a first step, and we'll see what the results are, and then take further action as needed.
Does the Lake Committee agree with that comment?
I totally agree with that, yes.
Okay.
We'll continue to monitor as we go and take Rick's testing into consideration and see if, next year we may need to do something different.
Okay, second question is, a white paper was created and distributed at the Rules and Regulation Committee meeting. It was created by McGee, a board member. It had recommendations and suggestions. Is the Lake Committee going to look at that paper at all?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, it's me again. Bill Elias, 34 Melinda Lane. I bought property back in 1980 when the CCI was bringing everybody down and trying to sell lots. And they would take you around and show you all the amenities. What quite a number of them are not here anymore. One of the things that they promised was a trout farm that probably most of you don't have any idea ever existed here. It was down by Old Lake Bella Vista, across from the Veterans Building, and it failed to transfer to the POA. And CCI ended up giving it to an individual, and he has sold it, and it now belongs to the Walton Foundation, who is trying to help work it into the community. And it worked so well, and I was wondering whether Rick would be interested in trying to have that as part of Bella Vista, because right now we're buying trout in order to have the trout we needed, and possibly they could raise their own. Now, I would help go to a committee and find out, but it's up to you all to tell me whether it's feasible or not. I know it's a surprise, I'm sorry.
No, I've been aware of that for some time, and that would take some effort to look into it before we could determine whether it would be economically viable to try to take that on. But yeah.
Could we use more trout than we buy now? Are we limited by what we can afford?
The short answer is yes. We provide enough trout between November and May. There are enough trout in the lake. I guess what I'm saying is we stock monthly, and at the end of the month, they haven't been all caught out. There's still trout to be caught. We, in the past, have put in what we would call growers, put those in November, and the intention is that they grow through the winter and they become catchable in the spring. We haven't been able to do that for the last couple of years.
Over the last 15 years, there have been a lot of trout nurseries that have gone out of business. They're finding out all the flooding that here in northwest Arkansas and Missouri is not working so well. I don't know about that one, the one here.
Okay.
Could we get any from there? I don't think so. Those are supplied by the state of Missouri, correct? Yeah. They wouldn't sell to private entities out of state.
All right. Anyone else for open forum? Okay. Any other business among the committee? Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, March the 11th. And with that, I guess we'll be adjourned. Thank you all for coming.